Well, hello, that's me again. Today is April 13th. It is Sunday, so it is a mixed bag today, but we need to talk about it because there are some indications of people completely going mad, and especially in United Kingdom, but also in the United States. We will start with that thing. This is obviously just beyond. As you can see yourself, Newsweek publishes the map according to Trump, Putin, and Xi. Well, what can I say? This map has been drawn by people who are really high on something really, I don't know, hard drugs probably. And so the discussion of Ukraine's future sparked comparisons of another World War II meeting, according to Stefan Wolf, professor of international security at the University of Birmingham in England. He said Trump's refusal to give Ukraine security guarantee was akin to appeasement of Nazi leader Adolf Hitler at Munich conference in 1938. Wolf believes the current US president sees the world as one which great powers carve out spheres of influence which they do not interfere in. We are probably going to see superpowers divvying up the globe between them, China and the US, and it is still a bit unclear what will happen with Russia, whether it will be a play on its own right or even more dependent on China. So this is a delirium of the incredible level, and obviously Mr. Wolf, being the guy from the University of Birmingham, is a sore loser, which pretty much, as I'm on the record, there are very few people with the common sense and good education in United Kingdom, and they are hurting. They are really hurting because they understand that, well, just British Parliament a couple of days ago had this special session discussing the possibility of saving the last metallurgical plant in England, which probably will leave it anyway, and then the United Kingdom will be the only so-called G7 country, which is essentially third world country with some remnants of the shipbuilding and jet engine, Rolls-Royce, obviously. That's about it. And so these guys are hurting constantly. They come up with this garbage, and then of course this was also a reaction to Mr. Kellogg's ideas. Mr. Kellogg, who, well, he is the loser by definition. He was an American general, but American general is becoming a euphemism for losers. He, he proposed to split Ukraine in three parts with, obviously, as he called, the resilience force. I mean, American generals are really good at, coming up with all kinds of the ridiculous, titles like resilience force, whatever the hell that means. Is there any field manual which explains what resilience force is? But no, Mr. Kellogg, being the former American general who never won anything in his life, which is the rule for US generals and US military in general, so he continues to pretend that he can actually dictate terms. He is definitely, considering who he was and related to the ideas of Mr. Pence, you remember the guy, and so, yeah, you cannot really explain to the guy that he shouldn't go into the military questions. His task is to come up with all kinds of ridiculous neocon ideas, and he should stick to it. He doesn't understand war, modern war for sure. Well, Pentagon doesn't understand it, that's for sure. Maybe on tactical level they learn a trick or two, but that's about it. Operationally, they have no clue. As basically empirical evidence, a massive body of this evidence, told us. And yet they continue this, basically discussion, if you wish. As Larry Johnson correctly stated, it is a clown show, and these are clowns, and many people, as I already stated a number of occasions, including, for example, Mr. Kellogg, whose idea actually is, basically taken up from, well, Yalta. When they talk about New Yalta, they have to understand Yalta was the meeting of the victors. Victors were obviously Soviet Union and its Red Army, which bore the brunt of the World War II and defeating Hitler. It's basically eliminated bulk of the, well, 80% of the creme de la creme Wehrmacht and its European allies. It was, of course, United States, and of course it was United Kingdom, Great Britain, which had, well, although we can discuss whatever definitions incredible Kareli Barnett gave it, but Great Britain was indeed the part of the victors. And so it was a legitimate meeting, and they indeed were setting up the kind of shape of the new world, which of course the United States it destroyed immediately because they confabulated the history about themselves as the, you know, the finest fighting force in history. But at least they were victors. Now, if some people still do not understand why there are no parallels with Yalta, United States is a loser in this war. United States, in this particular case, is in no way connected in any kind of the analogy, even remote one, to United States of Franklin Delano Roosevelt during meeting at the Livadia Palace in Yalta in 1945. There's no parallels whatsoever. United States is a loser. And the only talk today about all that is if Russia is willing, so far it is willing, to give United States an off-ramp and save the face. United States and Mr. Trump, despite his, I am on record, hot air ballooning in full, you know, force, despite his rhetoric and pathos-ridden statements, he didn't stop the military aid to Ukrainian armed forces, whatever is left of them. He continues to deliver the ISR, which is the critical part in the command and control. And for those people who believe that it's just the tanks which you have to have, or even air defense complexes, crappy as they are, because most of them are crap, honestly, be them American ones like Patriot or European, something like SMPT and things of this nature, you still have to have a command and control. You have to have communications. You have to have this critical C2 or C3, if you wish, command control communications, which is absolutely critical in fighting war. Well, what can I say? Mr. Trump talks a lot. But so now we have the, well, it's CNN Turkish CNN, so it's pretty much, if it's CNN, it's basically fake news. Turkish CNN is probably fake news even more, but they say that, oh yeah, Russians and Ukrainians are going to be talking about the regime of the, well, sailing, basically on the Black Sea. Maybe, but you know what, we have to wait and see, and if that will be any kind of contact on this level, that will be the contact of the, some kind of experts, I mean, not high level, but here we are though. And this is where it all starts, you know, to basically getting you into the mood, so to speak. Even Newsweek, again, I deliberately chose today the kind of Newsweek heavy presentation. As you can see yourself, Newsweek confirms Ukrainian F-16 fighter pilot killed in action, published on April 12th, now updated also on April 12th, and so. And when they talk about what is happening, they still cannot believe that, well, what is Russian Defense Ministry already confirmed. He was shot down by S-400 while trying to approach Sumy region. Why he was trying to fly, I don't know. So he's dead, and the F-16 is shot down. And the question is now that it doesn't matter how you train your pilots. NATO pilots have exactly zero. All of them, those aces, you know, we flew in Iraq, you know, or what have you. We flew in Afghanistan against mighty Afghanistan Air Force and Air Defense. They have no experience. The reason the guy was flying there probably to launch a couple of whatever, Storm Shadows or something like that, and probably, yeah, try to do the recon on Russian air defense. Well, he shouldn't have flown. Every single aircraft from NATO country, and it doesn't matter if it is obsolete, Mirage 2000-5 or F-16 or F-35 or F-15, doesn't matter. And Typhoon, you know, so whatever they do, don't fly there. You're going to be shut down. And it doesn't matter if there's 1, 2, or 5 of you. And maybe 50. 50 will be also shut down. Then they will have to face not just air defense, but fully networked VKS, which is the air space forces of Russia. They will be detected. They will be tracked. Firing solutions will be developed. And they will be also jammed electronically. So if there are any pilot in NATO which can or who can fly in these conditions, which I tell you that there are none, so well, good luck to them. Let them teach those, 21, 26-year-old, well, kids essentially, still kids, to go and kill themselves as they do, for example, that even their utterly Russophobic. They just hate Russian gods. They cannot stand Russians, especially Swedish elite. They cannot forgive Russia and Peter the Great that it was Russia which stopped Swedish, basically imperial expansion, defeated in the number of the battles, including naval battles, and so they cannot forgive it to Russians. So guess what? Even they cannot deny this anymore. And this is, which is like absolutely stunning. And here is, they discuss that analyst Byrne, and he's talking about that what is happening right now in Ukraine. They are rotting in the forest. Sweden was horrified by the situation in Ukraine. Hey, Sweden, you supported it. You became the member of NATO. You supplied truckload of the equipment, actually, and some of the Swedish mercenaries also marked themselves pretty much what the whole NATO militaries are now stained as the terrorist organizations. They committed atrocities and of unbelievable level. I'm not gonna go right now describing this. Believe me, it's horrifying. It's probably SS would be stunned by what NATO and its SOBs from Armed Forces of Ukraine, which are Nazi-driven, did to Russian civilians. So, but he admits that those incredible number of the cemeteries. And he talks about the war in Ukraine did not lead to the defeat of Russia as the Western elites wanted. He states, well, we know Western elites, together with the Western armies, are incompetent hacks. They love to talk about themselves. They like to project their force and power to all kinds of places where the people cannot fight back. But, I mean, here they encountered what they didn't expect, because they're stupid. They don't have good intel. They don't know what real intelligence is. They don't understand how to collect and analyze data. So, many Ukrainian soldiers who are missing are rotting in the forests, becoming fodder for wolves and rats. Lars Byrne, a member of the Royal Swedish Academy, said on the interview on the SWAP TV. They rot in the forest and are eaten by wolves and rats. And in his opinion, the conflict has already led to the emergence of huge cemeteries in the Ukraine, where perhaps 1 million or more killed militants are buried. Yeah, we know this. We continue to say this. For example, yeah, as Douglas McGregor stated a few months back, that 1.2 already have been confirmed, 1.2 million already have been confirmed as KIAs in Ukrainian army. So, what do we have today? Well, let's take a look at actually what do we have the tally for today. This is the this thing, which is Ukraine losses for April 13th. As you can see yourself, this F-16 already counted for. It's official statement by Russian Defense Ministry. Of course, there are a bunch of the experts, quote unquote, who run immediately starting to describe how it was shut down. But yeah, it was, people say S-400, highly likely air defense, but it could have been Su-35. So, but it doesn't matter. I mean, it's down. Somebody gets 15 million rubles, and there will be a party. So now we have this 1470, so 1,470 today, most likely most of them killed, as I already stated. And as you can see yourself, even the most conservative estimates by Russian army, Russian general staff and Ministry of Defense, as you can see yourself, yeah, we are nearing 1.2 million. So it is slaughter. The only thing which is left, as you can see yourself by the number of the UAVs, is, yeah, the attacking energy infrastructure of Russia, and this is what they are good at. So, and you know what, if that hasn't been enough, and we talked today about this kind of sit-rapish thing, here's where we have, like, you know what, I don't know how to judge it anymore. I know again, I voted for Trump. Our family voted for Trump. He was better than those bunch of the fanatics from Biden organized crime group, which were leading world towards the nuclear exchange, because obviously the United States is weak militarily, realistically. And the only thing they could do, obviously, against the background of their, well, NATO and West ass being handed to it by Russia, go nuclear at some point of time. And so they are fanatics again, and so at least it was the better option, and it is in some sense. At least Russians and Americans are talking, which is good, which this is good, make no mistake. And there are all kinds of the indications that, for example, I will talk about this in a minute, Mr. Witkoff talking to Mr. Putin for 4.5 hours the other day, which of course had everything to do with Iran, as it turned out, not just a settlement around Ukraine. But we still continue to get this absolute clown show, and I don't know what it is. Mr. Trump comes out 4 days ago, and Trump said that the United States has the most powerful weapon in the world. We have weapons that no one has the slightest idea about. That's what he says. These are the most powerful weapons in the world that we have, even more powerful than anyone else's. Okay, he told reporters in the White House. The American president, however, didn't specify what kind of weapons he had in mind. Well, yeah, you know, I think this is the reaction to everything what is happening on the line of the combat contact, and the fact that he now learned about what in actuality the U.S. Ground forces are. They are nowhere near the image they projected for the last 30 years. They never were. It was always exaggerated. But now we are talking about a complete implosion of the TOE, which is obsolete by itself. And so Mr. Trump decided to kind of, you know, it's pep talk, prod, you know, up, you know, the American morale, and it's understandable. But now, while doing this, he just goes out and does what Russians are just having a popcorn time, okay, from this. Trump extends Russia's sanctions for 12 months. Yeah, he extends Biden's sanctions, and, you know, it refers primarily to Executive Order 14024, signed by former President Joe Biden in April 2021 in response to an unusual and extraordinary threat to the national security, foreign policy, and the economy of the United States, presumed to be posed by Russia. Well, I mean, considering the fact of the global power balance, absolutely, Russia already shifted it already then, starting from 2014. It's just that Washington, being ignorant as it is, it didn't notice. Now, United States, actually, militarily, it's not even in the same league as Russia. In terms of ground troops and in terms of the VKS, it's nowhere near. But, well, Mr. Trump, who said he will stop the war in 24 hours, here it is. He just extended sanctions. Russians just said, okay, and, you know, just continue to live their life. And that brings us, especially against the background of the yesterday celebration. They call it internationally as the International Space Flight Day, which is, of course, one of the greatest holidays. Well, it should become state holiday. I don't understand why they didn't do it. In Russia, obviously, 12th April 1961, Yuri Gagarin being the first man in space. A huge accomplishment, of course. And, of course, they are correct. Yeah, they are absolutely correct, you know, putting up the not list of not only Soviet and Russian achievements, but also the American one, and again, American unmanned probing of space, especially in the solar system and beyond, is just magnificent, and you cannot deny the magnificence of this actually unmanned space program, and you can only applaud it. And this all started actually, of course, on October 7, 1957, with Sputnik being launched. But of course, man in space, it was a whole other story, a whole other accomplishment. So, and this is important, what I want to come back and remind you that actually Yuri Gagarin flew into space in 16 years from 1945, in which Soviet Union was totally destroyed. European part was absolutely in ruins. And in order for us to understand and grasp what is happening, I want to get us to this lady. She is a wonderful lady. You can see herself, here she is, Molly Panther Downes, sitting, you know, as you can see herself from in 20s, I believe, if not earlier than that, attire in London. And she was British. We can look attentively at Molly Panther Downes, and here's her actually bio page in at Wikipedia, that Mary Patricia Molly Panther Downes, she was born in 1906 and died, well, 91 years old. She did well, and was a British novelist and columnist for the New Yorker. Age 16, she wrote The Shoreless Sea, which became a bestseller and was serialized in the Daily Mirror. Her second novel, The Chase, was published in 1925. So she also became known in 1938. Panther Downes began writing for the New Yorker, a series of short stories, and from September 1939, a column entitled Letter from London, which she wrote until 1984. The collected columns were later published as the Letters from England 1940 and London War Notes. It is a very important book, actually. As I already spoke about it last time, you can see yourself. You can go into the archives, sign up for the free account, and you will find this book. And I strongly suggest you to read it, because it gives some insights, apart from other things, of course, like... And I strongly suggest you to read David Eisenhower's wonderful biography, Eisenhower at War, 1943-1945. But we'll talk about Molly Panther Downes. Why it is important, why this thing is absolutely critical in understanding the World War II, because she was a Londoner, and she, of course, went through what they call blitzes, the bombing and all that stuff. And obviously, here is the insight. Many people do not understand that what Britain at that time was feeling, standing alone. And then suddenly, let's kind of look at that thing, and let's recall how she described this. June 22, Germany invades Russia. And before that, you have to understand, remember famous Churchill speech, we'll fight on the beaches, we'll fight on whatever, you know. So it's a great speech, make no mistake. And this is in every single way is just a huge compliment to the heroism of the British people. And so, but here it is. The rumors of some such development, which is, of course, was the invasion of the Axis, not just Nazi Germany, all of them invaded. Such development with which the town had been buzzing all the previous week had been viewed with a caution as being either the build-up for a super bluff that would end in concessions by Stalin, or a bit on the wishful thinking on the part of those who had often spoke hopefully of the possibility of Russia and Germany flying at each other's throats. When that possibility was confirmed as an actuality on the most dramatic Sunday morning of the war, some of the gallant attempts to digest the startling new idea looked queer, and other plain funny. Vicars leading their flock in prayer for their lives may have faltered a trifle at the notion that they were now imploring divine protection for the godless hordes of Soviet Russia. The young and merry looked forward in vain, as it turned out, to hearing the International playing by the BBC. So it was indeed funny, because suddenly, and especially conservative part, not Labour part, the Labour was very different, I mean, at that time in United Kingdom, a conservative part, which was actually ready to prove, many people do not understand. Some of them were actually pro-Nazi, very much so. Suddenly, the actually grave danger, which of course United Kingdom or Great Britain experienced in 1941, was gone. Remember these desperate times at Dunkirk, which for some reason, they British want to present it as the great achievement, which it was not. It was a humiliating defeat. And when you look attentively, it was the largest defeat of the World War II in terms of the surrounded troops. It was essentially all European non-Germanic armies defeated there. So, but suddenly the Great Britain was relatively safe, and there would have been no invasion. And this is indeed funny when you consider the fact that there was, well, you remember those photos, I'm not going to bring them up, with Queen Elizabeth II being a young girl, I mean, so saluting, Nazi salute and things like that. There was a lot of talk about that. Well, Churchill, to his credit, decided to fight, but obviously, when you look attentively at the scale of things and the fact that British people, to their greatest credit, wanted to help actually the Soviet Union and the Red Army, it was a very funny thing that during it's September 6th, and of course the issue of the Lend-Lease, issue of the military aid to Russia was huge, and Churchill was correct actually when he was saying that, you know what, we were giving Soviet Union everything we could. Correct. Pretty much that was true. And so, however, both of the two speeches were in support of resolution unanimously carried by the Congress, affirming the unilateral resolve of the British working classes to destroy the Nazi fascist regime, their pleasure at the prospect of Anglo-American unity, and of determination of the trade union to give all possible assistance to the Soviets. Sir Walter also administered a sharp rap to the British Communist Party, which he described as a totally unreliable agent for carrying out any policy. During the ensuing debate, he had to take the floor again in an attempt to answer Mr. Jack Tanner, the president of the Amalgamated Engineering Union, who accused the Minister of the Aircraft Production, Colonel Mo Brabazon, of expressing the hope that the Germans and Soviet armies would write each other off and leave Britain as the dominant power in Europe. Oh, do you understand now why they suffered that much? Mr. Tanner declared that he could and would substantiate his statement that this was the sabotaging point of view of certain people in high places. Lots of people in the middling and low places feel that they like to hear more about this because it might help to clear up an uneasy current of suspicion that the impediments in the way of sweet maximum aid to Russia aren't entirely geographical. This is an outstanding actually admission, and it shows you that, well, you know what, let's be frank, working class people, you know, regular British folk, which, you know, inspired so much sympathy and empathy and even love on Russian part, they were all for it. They were all for supporting Soviet Union in defeating Nazis. And this is a great testimony to people, as they called Mr. Tanner, Engineering Union, no less. I mean, this is not some kind of the, you know what, floor sweepers. Nothing wrong with that either. But the fact that he talks about it, that there was a sabotage in high places, well, there was. And so it has to be kept in mind. And many of those people, as later the memorandum by General Stanley Embeck of the George Marshall's Operation Planning Department in Casablanca would reveal, British in the end were there in preserving their empire, not fighting Nazis directly. So Americans were extremely irritated because essentially the second front, starting from the 1942, was constantly sabotaged by Churchill and his cabinet, despite the fact that they provided heroic assistance as much as they could to the Soviet Union. But Stalin knew who Churchill was. Stalin knew who the British elites were. And so this gives us a very interesting insight, especially for people who are a little bit, well, around my age, Canadians. In 1990s, closer to middle to the end of 1990, something like 95, 97, you cannot find it today. CBC, I believe, released an astonishing documentary, astonishing, about primarily Canadian, there were some British and Americans, at Dieppe, famous failed Dieppe raid, which was as many participants, direct participants, former soldiers and officers who commanded this failure at the Dieppe, they were calling Churchill a war criminal for what was done deliberately to demonstrate to the Soviet Union by the virtual failure of the Dieppe raid that there's no way allies could land in Europe when the Soviet Union needed it desperately. Well, since 1943, Soviets were not really that much concerned about it. They were, but that's the whole other can of worms. But many people have to keep in mind also when reading Molly Punter Downes, which is an extremely important book in a sense of giving insights from the regular, ground folks in Great Britain. Let's take a look at the Stalingrad. And obviously many people do not want to remember this, but here we have with the Stalingrad battle raging, and obviously, as you can see yourself, it's January 31, actually the previous entry which I'm discussing is that January 30th, I believe. So the Stalingrad battle invoked so much admiration and sympathy for the Red Army and Soviet people that, they were just absolutely incredible. I mean, just absolutely, the flooding of the Russian things, including the War and Peace, which is gallantly attempting to present as a serialized drama what with the Battle of Austerlitz inside the studio and the Battle of Hyde Park outside. It was a lively evening. A harassed BBC officials observed later the project, which was launched with the blessing of the Soviet ambassador, seconded by an enthusiastic cable from the Union of the Soviet Writers, is the climax of a tremendous Tolstoy boom here. A new 30,000 copy edition of War and Peace has sold out in less than a month, and those who failed to get the book must now wait for the next printing, promised in May in the necessary paper, is forthcoming, or else get along with the radio version. The keen interest in anything Russian has even penetrated the nurseries, it would seem, judging by the exhibition of children war pictures now on view in London and designed for the States this spring. One of the most striking exhibits is called The Defense of Stalingrad, the large and rather horrific joint effort of a class of London school kids. So, and the moment the Battle of Stalingrad concluded, and it wasn't a secret for people then. They knew it, that the war will be won, and it will be won by the Red Army. And it is really funny reading those testimonies from Molly Punter Downes, written in the impeccable British, pardon me, English language. And, well, at least New York at that time had a much higher standards than it has today. And this is my suggestion for you to read this wonderful book, and maybe it will give you some understanding what was happening and why modern United Kingdom, its political elites, and Washington are deeply into the rewriting the history of the World War II and whitewashing, which is already too late, whitewashing Nazi regime in Kiev and the armed forces of NATO, which have been directly involved in the war against Russia. So this is what I wanted to tell you guys today, and as always, those who like what I do, please subscribe to my channel, and those who can afford, please support me on Patreon or buy me a coffee and two. It will help me to maintain doing what I'm doing. So have a nice rest of your weekend, and I'll talk to you later, guys. Bye bye.